The opinions and views expressed by individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of this network, their group, or other organization they may be involved with.
I'm looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty of Tuesday evening news. Tuesday evening
Hello, everyone. Yeah, welcome to the Psychedelic Reporters for this Tuesday, the 3rd of February, here, episode 192, here on NOK Network, the video news podcast focused on psychedelic medicine being reported in mainstream media. Shout out to the guys in Dead Ringer from Kirkland Lake, Ontario. Originally recorded by the Moody Blues, with some customized changes for our show. I am joined by my amazing joint host, Tara Simpson, along with the one and only Bufo Elverius, who has chosen all of our stories for us. Hello, Tara.
Well, hello, hobbies, and hello, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce Bufo. He's our Sonoran desert toad, or Colorado mud toad. Did you know he emits DMT from his skin? And while that sounds like great fun, park rangers would like to remind everyone, please don't lick the toad.
Don't lick the toad.
No. Sustainable safe harvesting. Just sounds so much better.
It does. And, yeah. We talk about it. We talk about it over and over. Does size matter? Is it this kind of show? Can we talk about it this evening? Does size matter? Yeah, well, our next article, our first article, talks exactly that, but in a psychedelic sense. PsychologyToday.com has an article called Does Size Matter in Psychedelic Therapy? The Overlooked Middle Ground Between Microdosing and Macrodosing. And this is written by A.D. Zuloff, Shawnee, PhD, Psychedelics to the Rescue, and reviewed by Devin Fry. The key points in this article is that in psychedelic research, the dose may matter as much as the drug itself in shaping therapeutic outcomes. Different doses create different therapeutic experiences and require different care models. The mid-range doses may offer benefits without the intensity or cost of a high-dose session. Expanding dose research can make psychedelic therapy safer and more accessible. Wow, this is awesome.
One mainstream discussion about psychedelics have focused on which compound works best: psilocybin, MDMA, AI, and ketamine, and others. But an equally important question receives far less attention. how much is the right amount. And that, again, is very important. I mean, whether it's with edibles and you're new to them or psychedelics, there's, I think, in my opinion, it does matter.
And it's a changing thing per person.
Absolutely. Metabolism, weight, experience level, whether it's THC or psychedelics, all plays a part. In medicine, dose has always mattered. In psychedelic therapeutics, however, attention often centers on the choice of compound and the importance of set and setting, while dose receives comparatively less focus. Outcomes are shaped not only by the molecule itself, but the dose range in which it's administered. Different doses can produce distinct subjective states, engage differential psychology and neurobiological mechanism, and require different therapeutic interventions. How this dose-sensitive perspective is shaping how myself and others in the field think about developing safe and effective and affordable psychedelic treatments. By understanding dose categories more precisely, we can match the right level of intensity to the right therapeutic need. Below, I outline 4 broad dose categories informed by existing literature and ongoing conversations with researchers across the field. So the first category is subperceptual, so microdose. A microdose is a low enough dose that users experience no noticeable psychoactive effects. While microdosing has become culturally popular, recent control trials have shown mixed or placebo-like outcomes. The innovative self-blinding study found that participants who believed they were microdosing showed similar improvements even when unknowingly taking placebos.
You wanna
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay. I got it. Museum dose. I've never heard of this one, and I'll be honest on that. A museum dose produces subtle but perceptible shifts, such as mild mood elevation, gentle introspection, and enhanced cognitive flexibility, or while preserving full agency and daily functioning. The term comes from the idea that one can visit a museum under its effects without impairment. Despite its therapeutic promises, the dose remains strictly understudied. It falls between the two well-defined zones, perceptionally silent microdose and the immersive macrodose that dominates modern clinic trials. The middle ground may offer important advantages, and particularly around safety, accessibility, and scalability. Huh.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about the psychedelic,
Psycholytic dose. Yeah, a psycholytic dose induces a mild to moderate alteration in consciousness, often enabling emotional openness and psychological flexibility without full ego dissolution. Historically, psycholytic dosing was used in European psychodynamic therapy, where patients engaged in talk therapy while benefiting from enhanced emotional access. As the field searches for a more practical and integrative treatment model today, interest in psycholytic approaches is quietly resurfacing. That's kind of cool, eh?
It is. A flood dose, and this is a macrodose. And the flood dose produces high-intensity experiences and form a foundation of most FDA-tracked clinical trials. Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know they used the macro dose. These sessions can be deeply meaningful and for some patients, transformative. However, they also require substantial infrastructure, prolonged clinical supervision, extensive preparation, integration, and specialized setting, and highly trained staff. While often effective, these protocols come with limitations, particularly around cost, staffing, and equitable access. I have a question. They didn't put like the percentiles or what considered the micro, the fallout, the
Yeah.
psychedelic or the museum.
Yeah, that would be interesting to have in this article so that people can kind of gauge like what do they consider a macrodose compared to what I would consider a macrodose versus someone else who
Well,
is macrodosing. It would be interesting to have those numbers to see what they're working with in the research that they're doing. But they're not going to give us everything because then, anyone else can just go and do it, I guess, right?
I like that calculator that is used through the Church of Ambrosia.
Yes, that is such a great tool. I tell people all the time about that dosage calculator at churchofambrosia.com. They have a psilocybin calculator you can use in order to try and figure out where you should start with your particular experience, weight, etc., versus somebody else, right down to the strains, if you know what strain you're taking. Such a good tool. It's, again, not like the most like 100%, but it's probably the closest thing you're going to get to a tool that's going to be helpful, because no one else has invented one yet. So
Well, and for looking over your congregational members' safety, you had to come up with a safe wave per weight for each individual, and I love it.
I do too. Yeah. The research imbalance in FDA regulated clinical trial or clinical development, dose finding studies are often a standard part of a process aimed at identifying the minimal effective dose that delivers therapeutic benefit while maintaining safety. This approach allows researchers to systematically evaluate how different dose ranges contribute to both efficacy and tolerability. Yet, most of today's psychedelic research ecosystem remains heavily tilted towards flood dosing. Funding priorities and clinical trial design all gravitate towards high intensity models. Meanwhile, mid range dosing, namely museum and psycholytic levels, receive comparatively little attention despite growing evidence suggesting that these ranges may engage different therapeutic mechanisms than macrodosing. This imbalance leaves significant therapeutic opportunities unexplored. And I'll just finish this last paragraph. Why a dose-specific approach matters. If we want psychedelic therapy to reach broad populations, not just those who can access specialized clinics, we need therapeutic models that are both effective and scalable. Mid-range dosing may offer a promising middle ground, meaningful therapeutic benefit with fewer side effects, lower resource demands, and greater accessibility. As the field innovation may depend not only on discovering novel compounds, but on rethinking how we dose and deliver them. So again, they're trying to standardize the treatment, right? Just like Big Pharma does with everything. So that could be helpful for some people, but again, if access isn't there or it's too expensive or, we're going to have problems.
We are. So you know who doesn't want to have problems? Is the people that this next article is talking about. And that is off of newsbywire.com. News by Wire article is Police Tripping for PTSD, introducing psychedelics to the police mental health dialogue. Is this the beginning? Or, well, this is written by, who is it written by? I don't even see it. But it is a press release date, January 30th.
Yeah. Groundbreaking initiative launches to explore psychedelic assisted retreats for police officer mental health. First of its kind, international donor funded psilocybin truffle retreat project in the Netherlands, led by police icons and top researchers, aims to build community and pioneer new dialogues on well being for law enforcement. And absolutely, they probably have the highest rate of PTSD amongst the general population. Anyone who's a first responder in general is going to have some mental health issues. I mean, they see a lot of shit and they deal with a lot of shit. So ultimately, that's going to put shit on their brain that needs to be dealt with, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a pioneering international collaboration led by Psychedelic Insights today announced a landmark initiative to organize a legal guided psychedelic retreat specifically for police officers. Conceived by Cops for Cops, this donor funded project seeks to address the profound mental health crisis in law enforcement through community education and supported exploration of non ordinary states of consciousness, all at no cost to participating officers. The initiative is led by Luc van Polge and unites leading scientific and clinical minds with iconic police figures. The advisory team includes Neil Woods, a former UK undercover detective and author who has experienced firsthand the trauma of police work, and Sarko Jurganian, a active duty U.S. police officer and mental health counselor. The research framework is led by Anaya I can't pronounce that last name right. Hikishevit. I hope I didn't.
think I got Anya Ray. The hell is fit?
Okay. Chief Executive Officer of Phenoma Science and Professor Lynette Averill of Baylor College of Medicine and Yale School of Medicine. We ask officers to endure incredible psychological strain, yet the system to support their long-term well-being are often inadequate, and says Neil Woods, former UK detective and advisor. This initiative isn't about promoting substance. It's about courageously exploring every avenue that might help those who serve return to peace and wholeness. The project moves beyond a clinical model to create a peer-supported spiritual space. As an officer, you learn to armor up. The real challenge and the real healing often comes from finding a safe space to be vulnerable, says Sarko Jurganian, active U.S. police officer and advisor. This project is built on that understanding. It's dialogue started by peers who get the culture and the struggle.
Yeah, so the initiative's first planned retreat is a 7-day program in the Netherlands, where the use of fresh psilocybin truffles is legal. It features a minimum 3 facilitator to participant ratio and an extensive psychological support. A research proposal led by Anya Regner aims to formally study outcomes to contribute to the scientific understanding of these approaches for trauma-exposed professionals. Based upon previous veteran research projects, the protocol results are studied. The safety notification: the use of psilocybin truffles in any way or form does not replace any medical advice, treatment, or medication. Psychedelic Insights provides the psychological guidance of legally, medically safe psilocybin truffle experiences with a European food safety certification. More information, click the link if you would like to learn more about this. I I like it. I like it. Good. Good. Good.
Hmm.
Good. Good.
Well, they definitely make good guinea pig subjects, right? Being that they do deal with some major stuff on a regular basis, and we know that dealing with trauma day after day after day takes a toll on people's brains. So good on them for starting something like that, because again, first responders like cops are generally the first one to bust someone for doing a psychedelic. So it's kind of cool that they're going to get an understanding of why people may be using these substances, and maybe that will fast forward some of the treatment things that are coming, right?
Word. I would like to see the two mind you, groups. The one where it's just the psilocybin, and then a group with psilocybin and the cannabis, where they're smoking it, relaxing, and they're doing the two, and the different studies are the results. I
Mhm.
mean, and then come back with those people and switch it up. One they do the psychedelic only, and the other one does the dual, and see if the results were different than their first session with the other way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
there's so much. Yeah, so much you can do with these studies. I would love to be able to be a part of like studies like that as Louisiana and other. It'd be fun to be a part of that.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I would take part. Sign me up. I don't mind, being a guinea pig for psychedelics. Just saying.
So, our third article before break is it? Yeah, yeah, we got time. Okay, is newsmedical.net. And first of its kind, clinical guidance on psychedelic medicine released. And Unbound Medicine, January 30, 2026.
Yeah. So Unbound Medicine and John Hopkins Medicine today announced a significant expansion of the John Hopkins Psychiatry POCIT Guide, a leading digital resource for clinicians and trainees worldwide. The latest update introduces first of its kind clinical guidance on psychedelic medicine developed by experts at Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelics and Consciousness Research, the world's largest research center of its kind. Millions of people with complex mental health conditions, such as treatment resistant depression and post traumatic stress disorder, have historically faced limited options. Up to 30% of people with major depression and nearly one third of those with PTSD do not respond to conventional therapies, highlighting the urgent need for new approaches. In recent years, psychedelic medicine has emerged as a promising area in psychiatric treatment. Once on the margins, psychedelic assisted therapies are now among the most closely studied innovations in mental health. Recent clinical trials have demonstrated therapeutic potential, with studies ongoing that could soon lead to FDA approvals. The new guidance in the Psychiatry Guide provides healthcare professionals with clear evidence-based recommendations to support safe and effective decision-making in this rapidly evolving field. By equipping clinicians with actionable information, the guide aims to improve outcomes for those facing challenging mental health conditions. That's super cool.
It is, and the importance of this new guidance was highlighted as recent John Hopkins panel on psychedelic medicine, which examined emerging research and the expanding role of primary clinicians in managing complex psychiatric conditions. Experts noted the promise of psychedelic therapies while emphasizing the need for careful patient and screening and informed clinician patient conservations to ensure safe evidence based care. In addition to the psychedelic content, the latest update includes patient education materials to bring the information gap between clinicians and patients in alignment with the DSM-R 52R TR criteria and updated drug sections. The new psychedelic guidance is now available through Johns Hopkins Psychiatry Guide app, accessible via the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, and through institutional access. That's really cool.
Absolutely. Lots of things going on in the psychedelic space with research right now. And I think that this is going to be a good thing. We just need to speed it up so we're actually helping people in real time, not just the few subjects that get into these clinical trials. So we'll see what happens.
That we will. And while we're looking, let's take time for medication time.
That's right, folks. It's time to pay some bills. So stay tuned for a word from some of our amazing sponsors, and then we'll return with more articles Bufo has chosen making mainstream media news.
Back in 4 minutes and 20 seconds here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network.
Dirty Dave, award-winning cultivator for over 4 decades. Dirty Dave, prized genetics fueled by advanced nutrients, original OG organics. Dirty Dave, award-winning products available at these fine establishments. Ask your shop to carry Dirty Dave. Contact us at dirtiesdoggies@gmail.com.
Join us for NOK Network monthly specials, 12 months a year, movie nights, spotlights on entertainment, and live on location coverage. Stay up to date about upcoming programming by subscribing to NOK Network on Rumble, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Facebook. Check out our webpage at www.noknetwork.com.
aka Sublimator Warrior, and I would like to welcome you to Smoke Signal in Tyndinaga.
One dab make your whole dome drip sweat. One dab make the homies all dip set.
Smoke signals. Tyenda Naga.
Smoke signals. Tyenda Naga.
Smoke signals. Tyenda Naga.
Ooey, ooey, gooey, that's a sticky dab. Sticky dab. Might just have to put this one on Instagram.
Smoke signals. Tyenda
Go
Naga.
and hold it in, feel it in your wrist.
Smoke signals. Tyenda Naga.
Check us out in Tyendinaga. 55 Highway 49 in Tyendinaga. It's on the res, and we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Now we get back to the show.
And we're back from our medication session here live on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network. And we're missing hobbies. And we have another set of stories coming at you from the realm of psychedelic medicine. So let's get at it. So this next article comes to us from marijuanamoment.net. New Hampshire lawmakers approve bipartisan bill to legalize psilocybin for medical use while rejecting separate psychedelic measures. And this was written on January 30th of this year by Kyle Yeager. New Hampshire lawmakers advance a bipartisan bill to legalize the regulated use of psilocybin for medical purposes while rejecting a separate measure on therapeutic access to psychedelic. Weeks after holding an initial hearing on both proposals, the House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee voted 18-0 on Wednesday to approve HB 1809 from Rep. Buzz Scherer, Democrat, and 11-7 to reject House Bill 1796 from Representative Michael Moffat. The vote took place on the same day that members of a separate committee considered a proposal to let voters decide on legalizing marijuana on the ballot. Interesting.
Yes, so the psilocybin legislation that advanced, meanwhile, would create regulatory pathway for patients with certain conditions to access the psychedelic for therapeutic use from a program overseen by the State Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS. Moffat's measure is more prescriptive about the proposed regulatory framework compared to Scherer's bill. At Wednesday committee meeting, Representative Yuri Podolzov, Republican, called psilocybin an important medication naturally occurring that can save lives. Representative Lucy Weber, Democrat, said she supported HB 1809 but not HB 1917. HB 1796 due to the budgetary implications of the latter proposal, calling it fiscally imprudent. At the earlier committee hearing this month, Jenny Higgins of DHS said officials have concerns around the lack of appropriated funds in Moffat's legislation, saying the department would not be able to absorb the program under its current budget. Here are the key provisions of HB 1809 which advanced. DHHS would be responsible for approving licensed medical professional to serve as providers of the psilocybin for qualifying patients. In order to qualified the program patients would need diagnosed with the treatment-resistant depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, substance use disorder, or another condition authorized by an advisory board of DHHS. The legislation specifically stipulates that only natural psilocybin can be administered, including synthetic versions of the psychedelic. Providers will also need to be approved by the department to grow and harvest their own psilocybin products. The process for treating qualified patients with the psychedelic would need to involve a preparation session, administration session, and integration session. A medical psilocybin advisory board would be established, comprised of a representative of DHHS, a qualifying patient, a veterans advocate, and 8 medical professionals. Those medical experts would need to include psychedelics researcher, 2 regulators overseeing existing medical psilocybin programs, and specialists in the treatment of addiction, palliative care, veterans affairs, neuropathy, and nursing and mental health counseling. The board would be tasked with analyzing data and patients' outcomes from DHS. Considering adding qualifying conditions for participation in the program, determination whether the law should be expanded. The program will be implemented if the advisory board, within 2 years of the bill's enactment, notifies lawmakers, regulators, and the governor that it can be effectively administered.
Wow. Yeah. The medical community has always recognized that patients exist with serious conditions that are often resistant to effective treatments. Okay, I have a problem with that statement. How are they resistant to effective treatments if the treatment is effective? Just saying. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A statement of purpose for the measure says, recently research has begun to show that certain of those patients have had positive results with closely supervised use of psilocybin for treatment. Patients with significant post-traumatic stress disorder, with treatment-resistant clinical depression, and with serious substance use disorder have been shown to benefit from the controlled therapeutic use of psilocybin in supervised settings, it says. The purpose of this act is to create a fully monitored and closely supervised setting in which an approved medical provider can treat a carefully chosen patient with an appropriate dose of psilocybin, which that same provider has produced for medical intervention. Here are the main details of House Bill 1796, which was rejected. The bill would permit the regulated use of psilocybin in a medically supervised setting with DHHS responsible for overseeing the program. To qualify for psilocybin treatment, a patient 21 years or older would need to be diagnosed with treatment-resistant depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance misuse disorder, a terminal illness requiring end-of-life care, or any other condition authorized by DHHS. A psilocybin licensing board under the department would be tasked with issuing licenses for independent medical psilocybin providers, therapy providers, cultivators, and testing laboratories. There would be a specific guidelines for facilities where the psychedelic could be administered, including security requirements and other safety protocols, such as ensuring that there are rescue medications on site if a patient experiences an adverse event. The legislation would also establish a therapeutic psilocybin treatment fund, which would be funded by revenue from licensing taxes and fees. The fund would go towards studies into the possibility of expanding the program to include additional psychedelics in the program. The law, if enacted, would take effect beginning January 1st, 2027. The purpose of the Therapeutic Psilocybin Act is to allow the beneficial use of psilocybin in regulated systems for alleviating qualified medical conditions. The bill's statement of purpose says, The prospect of either psilocybin bill advancing to enactment into law this session remains unclear, but lawmakers have been increasingly active in pursuing psychedelic reform in recent years. Last June, the New Hampshire Senate voted to scrap compromise legislation that would have lowered the state's criminal penalties for first-time psilocybin possession, while also creating mandatory minimum sentences around fentanyl. Why they are using those two in one freaking paragraph just annoys the hell out of me. Psilocybin is not like fentanyl. The originally introduced legislation would have completely removed penalties around obtaining, purchasing, transporting, possessing, or using psilocybin, effectively legalizing it on the non-commercial basis. However, a House committee amended the bill before unanimously advancing it last March. Meanwhile, in New Hampshire, the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee on Wednesday took up legislation from Rep. Jonah Wheeler that would have put the issue of marijuana legalization before voters on the ballot this November. And I think a lot of this just goes on about the whole cannabis aspect of it all, because they're still fighting for that down there too. So,
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, isn't that something, eh?
So, wow, that's interesting. So, jumping right into another one, let's bring up marijuana.moment.net. Marijuana and lawmakers file bills to extend Psychedelics Task Force to recommend more reforms through 2027. And this is written by Kyle Yeager.
Yeah, Maryland lawmakers have filed bills to extend a psychedelic task force through the end of 2027 to develop updated recommendations on expanding therapeutic access to the novel drugs and potentially creating a regulatory framework for broader legalization. Senator Brian Feldman, Democrat, and Del Pam Gazone, also Democrat, last week introduced companion versions of legislation for the 2026 session, aiming to build upon a current law that created the Maryland Task Force on Responsible Use of Natural Psychedelic Substances. That panel released an initial final report to state lawmakers last year with recommendations for the phased implementation of a wide range of reforms to provide legal therapeutic access to substances such as psilocybin. Members advised that it was ultimately recommending a multi-pathway framework for safe, broad, and equitable access to natural psychedelic substances with an initial focus on psilocybin. The Psychedelic Task Force was formed following Governor Wes Moore's signing of a pair of bills into law in 2024. The 17-person body overseen by the Maryland Cannabis Administration was charged with studying how to ensure broad, equitable, and affordable access to psychedelic substances in the state. Now, both the House and Senate have new proposals that would continue that work, maintaining the panel through December 31st of 2027. In the interim, the task force would be required to submit an updated report to legislators with additional findings and recommendations by October 31st of this year. Wow.
The House bill has been scheduled for a hearing before the Health Committee on February 10th. Beyond the extended timeline for the task force to study and develop the report, the current law would not change under legislation. The multi-step regulatory framework that members recommended last year involves phased implementation implementation of complementary elements from medical therapeutic use and supervised adult use to deprioritization and to commercial sales. The report said the model broadly and inclusively serves the need of Maryland's diverse population while enabling unified safety and standards, accountability, and viable economic pathways for small businesses. The first phase of the plan would to create an advisory board to establish safety parameters, data monitoring practice guidelines, and licensing protections, public education and campaigns training for facilitators, law enforcement, and testing facilities, as well as immediate restorative justice measures, the report states. Under phase 2, the state would implement deprioritization measures to mitigate the harms of criminalization, provide for supervised medical and adult use consumption facilities, allow personal cultivation for permitted individuals, and promote research processes. Finally, phase 3 would be contingent on the demonstrated safety outcomes and provider confidence based on the prior steps. Should those factors be satisfied, the last phase would lead to a commercial sales program for adults who maintain an active license to use natural psychedelic substances, coupled with an evaluation of the state's readiness for expanding to additional natural psychedelic substances. Safety and oversight measures ensure responsible and gradual expansion of access while maintaining capacity to identify and respond to emerging issues swiftly. The report said this approach plans for long-term learning and improvement, starting small, utilizing built-in evaluation and accountability mechanisms from the outset, gathering real-world data and committing to an iterative approach to policymaking.
Yeah, notably, the task force said it did not support delaying state action pending future federal Food and Drug Administration approval. The task force recognizes that implementing such a comprehensive framework requires careful sequencing and coordination, with particular attention to scope of practice issues that may significantly affect the viability and safety of different pathways. However, the order of implementation must carefully consider professional regulatory frameworks and safety concerns raised by medical organizations and healthcare providers. The task force recommendation for simultaneous implementation of multiple pathways does not mean that all components must activate on the same day, but rather that Maryland should avoid the sequential approach seen in other jurisdictions where implementing one pathway causes others to languish or bolster back and the gray markets. Rather, the task force said the multi-phase approach to psychedelic reform establishes foundational supports that support all pathways equally, followed by a coordinated launch of medical supervised adult use, deprioritization pathways, with commercial sales following once product safety systems are operational. Members also said that the model envisioned could be used in other states to develop their own laws and adapt to their own circumstances and values. At this point, the task force is only looking at psilocybin, mescaline, and DMT, while the legislature empowered members to investigate potential regulations for other psychedelic substances. They decided to take a more conservative approach in their initial work. The originally introduced House version of the task force legislation contained more prescriptive requirements to explore and issue recommendations as part of the psychedelic policy, such as systems to support statewide online sale of natural psychedelic substances with home delivery, and testing and packaging requirements for products containing natural psychedelic substances with clear and accurate labeling of potency. That language was ultimately removed, however. The task force legislation advanced about 2 years ago after a different law took effect, creating a state fund to provide cost-free access to psychedelic substances such as psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine for military veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury.
Oh, that was it. That was the end.
That was it. So they're working on things down there in Maryland.
They are. They're working hard and hardly working hard and hard. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I smoked a lot of reefer today. Psych Post is our last article, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that badly. Psych Post is our last article, and it's a dreamlike psychedelic might help traumatized veterans reset their brains. And this is written by Katrina Petrova. And in Psychedelics, Drugs, PTSD. Good article.
Yeah, a new study suggests the intensity of spiritual or mystical moments felt during psychedelic treatment may predict how well veterans recover from trauma symptoms. Researchers found that soldiers who reported profound feelings of unity and sacredness while taking ibogaine experienced lasting relief from post-traumatic stress disorder. These findings were published in the Journal of Affective Disorders. For decades, medical professionals have sought better ways to assist military personnel returning from combat. Many veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, as well as traumatic brain injuries that can be caused by repeated exposure to blasts. These conditions often occur together and can be resistant to standard pharmaceutical treatments. The lack of effective options has led some researchers to investigate alternate therapies derived from natural sources. One such substance is ibogaine. This psychoactive compound comes from the root bark of the Tabernath iboga shrub, which is native to Central America, Central Africa. I was like, wait a minute, I know that's not from Central America. That's other things. Cultures in that region have used the plant for centuries in healing and spiritual ceremonies. In recent years, it has gained attention in the West for its potential to treat addiction and psychiatric distress. Unlike other psychedelics, ibogaine often induces dreamlike states where users review their memories. Despite anecdotal reports of such, the scientific community still has limited understanding of how ibogaine works in the human brain. Most prior research focused on classic psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA. The specific psychological mechanism that might allow ibogaine to alleviate trauma symptoms remain largely unexplored. Randy E. Brown, a researcher at the Stanford University School of Medicine and the VA Palo Alto healthcare system, led a team to investigate this question. They worked in collaboration with the late Nolan R. Williams and other specialists in psychiatry and behavioral science. The team sought to determine if the subjective quality of the drug experience mattered for recovery. They hypothesized that the mystical experience may be the key driver of therapeutic changes. I know that ibogaine is being used by lots of people at this point, not necessarily in mainstream, but behind the scenes. And they're having amazing success with treating all sorts of things with ibogaine if it's done safely. We actually interview people on Open Your Eye who are facilitators, such as Patrick and Michelle Fishley, and they'll actually be on Open Your Eye this Thursday. So make sure you tune in for that, because they can tell you more about this whole ibogaine thing as facilitators and users of the psychedelic compound themselves. They are probably the biggest experts you're going to find in the area.
The concept of a mystical experience in psychology is specific and measurable. It refers to sensation of unity with the universe, a transcendence of time and space, and deeply felt peace of joy. It also includes a quality known as ineffability, meaning the experience is too profound to be described in words. The researchers wanted to know if veterans who felt these sensations more strongly would see better clinical results. The study analyzed data from the 30 male specialized operation veterans. All participants had a history of traumatic brain injury and combat exposure. Because ibogaine was not approved for medical use in the United States, the veterans traveled to Canada and Mexico for the treatment. This setup allowed the researchers to observe the effects of the drug in a clinical setting outside the U.S. The treatment protocol involved in a single administration of the drug. The medical staff combined ibogaine and magnesium sulfate. This addition is intended to protect the heart, as ibogaine can sometimes disrupt cardiac rhythms. The veterans received the medication only after a period of fasting. They spent the session lying down with eye shades, generally experiencing the effects internally rather than interacting with others. To measure the psychological impact of session, the researchers administer the mystical experiences questionnaire. This survey asked participants to rate the intensity of various feelings, such as awe or a sense of scaredness. The research collected these scores immediately after the treatment concluded. The treatment also assessed the veterans' PTSD, several using a standardized clinical interview. They took these measurements before their treatment, immediately after, and again 1 month later. This allowed them to track changes in symptom severity over time. Additionally, the researcher used electromyography or EEG to record electrical activity in the brain. The analysis revealed a clear statistical association between the survey responses and the clinical outcomes. Veterans who reported more intense mystical experiences showed larger reductions in PTS severity. These patterns held true immediately after the treatment. It also persisted when the researchers checked on the participants 1 month later. The researchers observed similar trends for mental health measures. Higher scores on the mystical experiences survey correlated with greater improvements in depression and anxiety. These findings align with previous research on other psychedelics, such as psilocybin, which has linked spiritual breakthroughs to improved mental health. The study also identifies changes in brain's physiology. The researchers focused on a specific brainwave measurement called peak alpha frequency. This measurement reflects the speed of brain's electrical cycles when a person is resting but awake. High arousal states, often seen in PTSD, can be linked to faster alpha frequencies. The data showed that more intense mystical experiences were associated with a slowness alpha frequency 1 month after treatment. This reduction suggests a shift away from the hyperarousal state that characterizes trauma. The brain appeared to be more toward a more relaxed mode of functioning. This physiological change supports the idea that the treatment effects are biological and not just psychological. The slowing of the brain rhythms may represent a lasting neural adaptation. It implies that the intense subjective experience of the drug might trigger neuroplastic changes that help the brain reset. Wow, this is exciting.
Yeah, it is. Brown and her colleagues suggest that the ego death, often reported during mystical experiences, may play this role. This phenomenon involves a temporary loss of sense of self. It may allow individuals to detach from rigid, negative beliefs about themselves formed during trauma. When the sense of self returns, it may do so without a heavy burden of past guilt or fear. The authors noted several limitations to their work. The study used an open label design, meaning there was no placebo group for comparison. All participants knew they were receiving ibogaine. It's possible that their expectation of healing contributed to the positive results. The sample size was also relatively small, consisting of only 30 individuals. Furthermore, the group was entirely male and composed of special operations veterans. This specific demographic means the results may not apply to women or the general public. The unique training and resilience of these veterans might influence how they respond to treatments. The researchers also pointed out that the study relies on correlation. While the link between mystical experiences and recovery is strong, it does not prove causation. It is possible that a third unmeasured factor causes both the mystical experience and the symptom improvement. Despite these caveats, the research provides a foundation for future investigation, and the authors recommend that the subsequent studies use randomized controlled designs to verify these effects. They also suggest exploring whether these psychological and physiological changes endure beyond the 1 month mark. Future research could also investigate the role of psychotherapy combined with the drug. In this study, veterans received coaching but not intensive therapy during the dosing sessions. Combined with biological reset of ibogaine with structured psychological support might enhance the benefits. This study adds to a growing body of evidence supporting the potential of psychedelic therapies. It highlights the importance of subjective experience in healing processes. For veterans struggling with the aftermath of war, these findings offer a preliminary hope that treatments address both the brain and the spirit may offer relief. And again, I mean, how do you double-blind study ibogaine? Obviously, some people are going to have an experience and the others aren't, and they're going to be like, what? And then they'll say in the study, well, we can't do that double-blind because obviously these people know they're not getting anything. So that's, like, we've seen that in studies before too, where they have an issue with, the placebo group knowing that they got a placebo because they didn't get high or anything happened to them, right? So then they say that study wasn't done right. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, 30 patients and they're all doing well after the 1 month mark. I would say that's a pretty good success rate.
Yeah. I believe it is. It's so much right now is being that they have a documentary from Netflix with ibogaine, and lots of stuff is going on with it. Lots of movement.
Yeah. And the fact that, I mean, these same people tried traditional treatments, pharmaceuticals, which they knew they were receiving and had no benefit. So how can you say that when they took the ibogaine and they actually got better, that, you know, it's because they knew they got ibogaine. Well, they knew they were getting pharmaceuticals that were supposed to cure them. So why didn't that work?
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, the ibogaine kind of grabbed it and kind of like shook it, like it just cracked, just shook it out, you know, in a way. But so Thursday, open your eye. You guys got Patrick and Michelle Thursday.
Yeah, they're ibogaine facilitators out of BC. They run retreats. They've been doing this for many, many years. They're very, very knowledgeable and well-trained first responders, both in nursing. So they're probably the best source of ibogaine information, especially here in Canada, because they are Canadian. And they've been doing this long enough. They know what's up. So make sure you tune in to Open Your Eye on Thursday at 8 if you want an update on what's going on in the realm of psychedelics with ibogaine.
Thank you for joining us here on Psychedelic Reporters on NOK Network, and for tuning in to our video podcast on NOK Network's Rumble and YouTube pages, as well as our social media sites.
That's right, folks. I really hope you've enjoyed your update today on mainstream media coverage of psychedelic medicine advancements from around the globe.
Many thanks to our sponsors and to my joint host, Tara Simpson, and to Bufo Various for choosing the stories, and to you, our listeners, for joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday, and for Kim Cooper for being in the background and doing like lots of work for us. And let's hear, okay, joining each week on Psychedelic Tuesday. Let's hear from Dan Ringer. I was going to say Kim Cooper. She was going to sing the Dan Ringer song. No, let's hear from Dan Ringer again from Kirkland Lake on our way out. Night.
Looking at myself, reflections of my mind. It's just the kind of day to leave myself behind. So gently swaying through the fairyland of love. If you'll just come with me, you'll see the beauty